If you were told to keep your wedding low and simple, would you follow the advice, or would you want to please your mother and have an elaborate wedding? The bride, Adaobi, sat in front of a mirror, her face glowing as a makeup artist applied the final touches. Her mother, Mama Nkechi, stood behind her, raining praises on her daughter. The house was alive with the chatter of relatives, and the rhythmic drumming of traditional Igbo music echoed from the courtyard. The air was thick with the scent of jollof rice and fried chicken, and the yard was decorated with bright flowers and colorful fabrics. Mama Nkechi smiled warmly, placing her hands on Adaobi's shoulders. "My dear, today is the happiest day of my life. Smile for me," she said. Adaobi forced a smile, but her heart was heavy. She couldn't stop thinking about what had happened a few weeks before. Before the wedding preparations began, Adaobi and her fiancé, Cheek, had gone to the market to buy some items for the ceremony. As they browsed through the stalls, a pregnant madwoman approached them, pointing directly at Adaobi. Her voice was loud and strange as she warned, "Be careful, my daughter. Keep your wedding simple." Then the madwoman laughed and walked away, her words leaving everyone in the market staring. Some market women whispered to Adaobi, "Listen to her. Mad people sometimes speak the truth. They see things we don't." Adaobi, feeling uneasy, hurriedly bought what she needed and left with Chiki. Later that evening, Adaobi shared the incident with Mama Nkechi. "Mama, a madwoman warned me to keep my wedding simple," she said nervously. But Mama Nkechi dismissed the story, waving her hand. "Adaobi, don't mind that madwoman. What does she know? We must have an elaborate wedding. I've waited too long for this day," she said firmly. As the days passed, Mama Nkechi intensified the wedding preparations. She invited her wealthy friends and planned a grand ceremony that everyone in the village would talk about for years. One evening, Adaobi tried to reason with her mother. "Mama, Chiki and I have decided on a simple wedding. Please understand," she pleaded. Mama Nkechi's face changed, and she began crying loudly. "So my enemies have finally succeeded. They don't want me to enjoy the fruit of my labor. You want to disgrace me after everything I've done for you and your siblings." Adaobi felt her heart sink. Mama Nkechi continued, "Look at your elder sister, Neka. Her husband is poor and they are not legally married. And your second sister, Ifeoma, gave birth out of wedlock. I have worked so hard to raise all of you, and now the one thing I ask, you want to deprive me." Tears rolled down Mama Nkechi's cheeks as she sat on the couch. She reminded Adaobi of how she had attended her friends' children's elaborate weddings and how much she had longed for this moment. "I have already invited my friends. How will I face them if you do this to me?" she cried. Adaobi felt torn. She left the living room and went into the bedroom where Chike was waiting. "What is it this time?" Chike asked gently. Adaobi sighed deeply. "Mama is insisting on an elaborate wedding. I think we should just go along with her plans. You know how she is. If we don't, it's going to be a long and stressful journey for us," she said. Cheek frowned. "But you don't want that kind of wedding. This is about us, not her." "I know," Adaobi said softly, her voice breaking. "But I'm already pregnant. If the bump starts to show, the priest won't wed us. It's against the church's rules. Let's just do what she wants and get it over with." Cheek nodded reluctantly. "All right, let's make her happy. But remember, this is our life, Adaobi. After the wedding, we must set our boundaries." With that, the couple agreed to go along with Mama Nkechi's plans, even though Adaobi couldn't shake off the madwoman's warning. Adaobi's wedding day was one to remember. It was a big and grand celebration that brought joy and excitement to everyone who attended. The church was decorated with bright, beautiful colors, and the seats were filled with a large crowd of family, friends, and well-wishers. The air buzzed with laughter, chatter, and the sweet sound of wedding songs. Adaobi, the bride, looked stunning in her white gown. Her beauty shone as she walked gracefully down the aisle, her husband-to-be, Cheek, by her side. Cheek wore a well-fitted suit and had a proud smile on his face as he held Adaobi's hand tightly. Everyone in the church admired the couple and whispered about how perfect they looked together. Guests were dressed in their best clothes, and the mood was cheerful. People crowded the dance floor, swaying to the music played by the lively band. The master of ceremony, MC, took the microphone and announced, "No spraying of money on the couple. Please drop any gifts or cash into the fancy bucket provided." Adaobi and Chike danced happily, their faces glowing with joy. Meanwhile, Mama Nkechi, Adaobi's mother, kept a close eye on everything. She walked over to the caterers, giving them clear instructions. "Serve my club women first," she said. "They are rich, and they must be well taken care of. Make sure they have enough food." Mama Nkechi moved around to ensure everything was in order, determined to keep the day perfect for her daughter. Seated in the corner was Adaobi's grandmother, Mama Ugochi. She didn't join the dancing or the lively chatter, but watched everything quietly. Her sharp eyes followed Adaobi's every move, as if she were searching for something. Finally, she stood up and walked toward the dance floor. She had a bundle of fresh Naira notes in her hands, and with a warm smile, she dropped the money into the fancy bucket meant for gifts. Hugging Adaobi tightly, Mama Ugochi whispered, "God bless your new home, my golden girl." This was the nickname she had given Adaobi as a child because she was special, smart, hardworking, and very different from her siblings. Adaobi smiled warmly at her grandmother, but as Mama Ugochi placed her hand on her stomach during the hug, Adaobi felt a sudden shiver. The touch sent a strange feeling through her body. She quickly shook it off and forced a smile, but her husband, Cheek, noticed. "Are you okay, Adaobi?" he asked, looking concerned. She nodded and replied softly, "I'm fine," though her smile didn't reach her eyes. Later in the evening, as the guests began leaving, Adaobi walked around, thanking them for coming and escorting them to their cars. She was exhausted, but happy. Suddenly she noticed her grandmother sitting alone in a quiet corner, muttering softly to herself. Concerned, Adaobi approached her. "Grandma, are you okay?" she asked, kneeling beside her. Mama Ugochi looked up sharply, her eyes colder and more calculating than before. For a moment, she stared at Adaobi without speaking. Then her expression softened into a small smile. "Yes, I'm fine, my golden girl. Go and enjoy your night," she said in a calm voice. Though her grandmother smiled, Adaobi couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling in her heart as she returned to her husband's side. After Adaobi and Chike's beautiful wedding, her sisters helped her pack all the gifts into the car boot. They drove home happily, laughing and talking about the events of the day. They thanked God for the good weather that made everything perfect. When they got home, Adaobi's mother handed her a gift, a sexy lingerie set. She knew her daughter was shy and wanted her to feel confident and look attractive for her husband. Adaobi had patiently kept herself for the right man, and now she wanted to make her marriage special. The next morning, Adaobi and Chike woke up feeling excited. They started unboxing their wedding gifts. Among the items were a brand new fridge, cooking utensils, and many other lovely things. But one gift caught Adaobi's attention. When she unwrapped it, she found a torn suit that looked like an old rag. Adaobi and Chike stood staring at it, confused and upset. Who could have done such a wicked thing, they wondered. Without thinking twice, they decided to discard it and burned it immediately. A few months later, Adaobi gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Junior. Their home was filled with love and laughter. Adaobi and Chike were proud parents, enjoying every moment of their son's early years. For 5 years, life was sweet and peaceful. Then, out of nowhere, their joy was tested. One day, Junior began having seizures and convulsions. Adaobi was terrified. "Honey, Junior is convulsing again," she would cry, calling Chike at work. Chike would drop everything and rush home, driving at top speed on the highway. Put an iron spoon in his mouth to stop him from biting his tongue, he would instruct Adaobi over the phone. The first time the seizures happened, Junior was playing with his friends in the garden. Suddenly, he fell to the ground and started shaking uncontrollably. A kind neighbor, who happened to be nearby, rushed to help. The neighbor, an elderly herbalist, rubbed a special treatment on Junior's face and body. The treatment calmed Junior down and stopped the convulsions. Later, the herbalist explained that, traditionally, they believed a child might be seeing a devilish masquerade that frightens him so much that he convulses. Adaobi and Chike were desperate to find a permanent solution. They took Junior to local hospitals and tried different treatments, but nothing worked. The herbalist's treatment was the only thing that helped, but it was very expensive. Despite the cost, they had no choice but to keep buying it to help their son. Their once joyful home was now filled with worry and sadness as they struggled to save Junior. From that day, things went from bad to worse. It was like jumping from the frying pan into the fire. Junior's sickness was draining all their money. Chiki started borrowing loans from his office just to cover the hospital bills. Adaobi, who owned a small shop near their house, watched as her shop became completely empty. They struggled to eat each day. Chiki's job at the company was also at risk. His performance had dropped because he was always worried about his family. As the head of marketing, his poor results began affecting the company. The manager called him several times to warn him, saying, "Cheek, your work is not meeting expectations." Cheek told his wife about the warnings, and she advised him, "Please focus, Chike. We need your salary to survive and care for Junior." But Adaobi's own problems were growing. She couldn't pay the rent for her shop, so she had to close it. At night, while they were trying to sleep, Junior would suddenly scream from his room. Adaobi and Chiki would jump out of bed and rush to him, trying to calm him down. "Jesus, help us!" Adaobi would cry. They had already spent all their money on treatment. Adaobi would take anointing oil and pray over Junior until he calmed down. With tears in her eyes, she would cry, "I don't want to lose my child." Cheek would hold her, comforting her, saying, "I'm here for you and Junior. We'll get through this together." Then, Cheek lost his job. The company couldn't keep him any longer because of his poor performance. Desperate, he started working as a bus conductor, shouting for passengers on the road to earn some money. Adaobi, on the other hand, started washing clothes and running errands for their neighbors to get paid. They sold most of their belongings and moved into a tiny apartment where they shared a public toilet with other tenants. Their once comfortable life was gone. But they didn't share their pain with anyone. They encouraged each other, saying, "We will get through this together." One day, one of Adaobi's wealthy clients, who called her to clean his hotel rooms, tried to take advantage of her. "You're too young and beautiful to be suffering like this," he said. "If you agree to be with me, I'll take care of you. I have money." But Adaobi stayed faithful to her husband. Even though they were poor, she was grateful. One night, after Junior had another seizure, Adaobi broke down. She screamed, "God, why would you let us suffer like this? We've been faithful to you. We've paid our tithes, given to others, and even helped build the church. But you're just watching us suffer. What kind of father are you?" Tears streamed down her face. Chiki quickly covered her mouth and said, "Don't say that, Adaobi. God is always faithful. Let's count the blessings we've had before, even if things are tough now. Maybe this is a test of our faith." But Adaobi shook her head. "I'm weak, Chike. I can't keep going," she said, leaning on him. "Let's be strong for Junior," he replied, holding her tightly. They took food on credit from nearby shops, but when they couldn't pay back, the shop owners began insulting them in public. Adaobi would hide whenever people came to ask for their money. Sometimes she would send Junior to tell them, "My mother is not around." The embarrassment was too much for them to bear. Even though Adaobi was reluctant to pray, Chiki encouraged her. Together, they knelt in their tiny, empty room. With tears in their eyes, they poured out their hearts, asking God for mercy and help. Their voices echoed in the silence, and they begged God to save them from their suffering. It all started one Sunday morning. Adaobi and her husband Chiki struggled to prepare for church. Life had not been easy for them. They barely had enough to eat, let alone give as an offering. Despite everything, Adaobi took the little money she had and went to church with faith in her heart. During the service, a guest minister, who was a prophetess, was invited to speak. While Adaobi was giving her offering, the prophetess called her out. She looked at Adaobi and said, "An old woman has been watching your every move and that of your husband. She has sworn that you will never see happiness." Adaobi froze. Her heart sank, and tears began to roll down her cheeks. She didn't know what to say. The prophetess continued, "The woman is envious of your kind heart and does not want anything good to come your way. Even your son's epilepsy is not ordinary. If you had listened to the warnings of the madwoman, you could have saved yourself from all this trouble. But there is still hope. There is a remedy." Chaik, who had been watching from his seat, quickly came to console Adaobi. He whispered to her, "God is fighting for us. This battle is not ours, but His. Don't worry, everything will be fine." When they got home, Adaobi couldn't stop crying. She started thinking about everything the prophetess said. Memories came flooding back. She traced everything back to her wedding day. Who could be against me? She wondered. She remembered how the madwoman had shouted the warnings. She recalled the torn suit Chiki received as a wedding gift, and the strange things that had happened since then. Everything suddenly made sense. The prophetess had advised them to fast and pray for 7 days, and then take a brand new wrapper to all the elderly women in their family. Adaobi didn't have much money, but she remembered that she had some new wrappers left from her wedding gifts. She decided to use those. After the 7 days of fasting and prayer, Adaobi and Chiki followed the prophetess's instructions. Adaobi went to her mother's house and gifted her the wrapper. Her mother prayed for her and blessed her. She then visited her grandmother and gave her a wrapper too. Her grandmother also prayed for her and blessed her. No one in the family knew what Adaobi and her husband were going through. Adaobi made sure to act cheerful whenever they called to check on her. A few weeks later, Adaobi's mother called her with some news. "Your grandmother is very ill," she said, her voice shaky. Adaobi remembered the prophetess's words. "As each person receives the wrapper, it will be like returning every evil arrow back to the sender." Anger boiled within Adaobi as she headed to her grandmother's house. When she arrived, Adaobi confronted her grandmother. She shouted, demanding the truth. "Confess!" she screamed. "Tell me what you have done to me and my family." Her grandmother, weak and trembling, began to cry. Adaobi's mother was there too, shocked and confused. Her grandmother finally confessed, "I was jealous of you. You are kind, beautiful, and everyone loves you. I couldn't bear to see you happy, so I cursed you and your family. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." Adaobi's mother broke down in tears. She begged Adaobi for forgiveness too. "I pressured you into having that elaborate wedding. I'm so sorry, my daughter," she said. In her final moments, the grandmother, with a weak voice, whispered, "Adaobi, I regret everything. Please let my soul find peace. Forgive me." Through her tears, Adaobi found the strength to forgive her. She held her grandmother's hand and prayed for her. Moments later, her grandmother passed away. Not long after, Adaobi and Chiki felt a sense of relief, as though a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders. They continued to pray and trust God. A few days later, Cheek received a call. It was from a company he had submitted his CV to a long time ago. They wanted to employ him. He couldn't believe it. It felt like a miracle. Adaobi and Cheek thanked God for his intervention and for fighting their battles. The prophetess prayed for their family and committed them into God's hands. From that moment, Adaobi and Chike's lives began to turn around. They learned to trust God in everything and to keep their faith strong, no matter the challenges. Lesson: this story teaches that jealousy and envy can destroy lives, but forgiveness and faith can heal even the deepest wounds. Adaobi's willingness to forgive her grandmother and trust God led to a new beginning for her family.